Jalen Brunson is a really unique player. He's super physical, crazy crafty. He's been really showing off his ability to separate, create three-point shots as well. And overall, he's a great player to learn from because no matter how tall you are, how big you are, he probably displays some techniques that you can add into your game. So I'm gonna go over a lot of this today, really dive into all the small details that make him an incredible player to watch. So first off, let's dive into his second and third level scoring. Or in other words, mid-range, which I consider the third level, and short jumpers, floaters, runners, all that, which is the second level. So notice first that he uses bumps very well to get into his spin move around this closer area. We'll talk about his physicality at the end, but many times he's not worried too much about getting by, but rather just a bump on the defender to then spin off of it. Also notice that he's really good at knowing where he is in space and being confident he has enough space to actually spin into this area. Whereas I see a ton of players who spin and end up running right into defenders. Not him. He's also very good at controlling space and not getting in too deep to the basket. Seems like he's always stopping at the perfect place for him to put up a little floater. Part of this is having a really good feel for space or the spatial awareness that tells him where to stop and still have enough for a comfortable shot. Part of this is his deceleration ability that allows him to stop on a dime from these high speeds in unorthodox areas 5 to 10 feet from the bucket when most would be at too high of a speed to do so. And also because he plays at a super in control speed that allows him to do this without having to slam on the brakes every time. He also uses tools like these same foot, same hand floaters to get these shots off a step quicker, especially if he knows that one more step will lead him into a danger zone and give defenders more time to contest that shot. Or these quick 2-foot floaters where he really strikes the ground quickly and pops up into that floater before they can get to it. But even then, sometimes I'll ask myself, like, how in the world did he get that shot off? Like here, he's got Obi Toppin, one of the most athletic players in the world, to be honest, chasing him down, and he gets this off with time to kill. So here's how I see it. When players are at a bit of a disadvantage or kind of desperate, they tend to focus on recovering to the spot rather than blocking a shot or being ready for it. Like here, his arms go down to move more fluidly, and that's when Jalen gets up into this floater comfortably. And you see this all the time, especially with bigs. No one runs at a high speed with their hands fully ready to block you. So the players like Brunson, who are really good at one, getting defenders to go, oh crap, I already have to move a bit to stay with this guy. And two, feeling out when defenders aren't ready to block it, like Embiid here, usually tend to get blocked less, especially if they have a really quick trigger on these floaters. Two, if you're physical, you'll gain an advantage because one of two things will usually happen. One, you'll send them backwards and put them even a bit on their heels, which usually means they're going to be far slower off the ground if you get up into that shot quickly. Or two, if it's earlier on the drive and you take a tight angle and they end up bumping you, they may feel like they're one more bump away from getting a foul call and end up not being very aggressive. This is more realistic in the NBA, but definitely still valuable at all levels. He also doesn't telegraph these pull-ups or floaters at all. In situations where most players would lock in on the rim from here, he's constantly waiting until the very last second, even looking in other directions as if he's going to pass or make a counter move, so that defenders can't guess this from a second earlier and begin to prepare their contest early. And finally, by default, you'll see him jumping backwards many times on pull-ups to get space, knowing he has a shorter frame and not crazy high of a release, even when he doesn't really need to or doesn't seem so. Because, well, you never know, especially with some of the frames and wingspans that he's playing against, and he's comfortable doing this anyways. I also got a whole video on his post-up game, so I'll leave y'all to go check that out. Next, let's cover his off the dribble game. First, watch here his ball placement on the dribble, especially with pressure. This may seem mundane, but whether it's behind him, out wide, or even as he kind of leans forward, puts it behind his legs, he understands that in close quarters, the body should probably be between the ball and the defender. And because of this, many defenders are over aggressive trying to get to it, which gives him opportunities to drive. And the same goes for as he drives to the rim too. Many times you'll see him drive aggressively into a defender far more than most would and continue to work through this contact, since he understands that this can be a pretty good tool to win the contact battle and get them out of position. But he's never out of control as he does it, which is what I usually see lead to charges or turnovers. And bringing this back to the point, he's amazing at keeping the ball in places where the defenders can't get to it. He'll tuck it away, maybe by his hip, and even kind of duck his head in to add an extra layer of protection. In terms of his attacking, he's super unpredictable and has a crazy knack to explode when defenders are relaxed, when the ball is maybe on the way up or down, when he's in a weird position. All the things I constantly talk about to make the game easier off the dribble and not have to do too much. Now, in terms of how he maneuvers ball screens, he's very crafty in terms of creating advantages before the screen, whether this is in the form of rejecting it if the defender is overplaying, which will often cause him to do with his eyes, rotations, and pace, rejecting and reusing like he does here to get his defender a bit out of position, noticing that his defender is becoming distracted with the screen and using that to gain a step on them right away. And because he's so good at getting defenders on his back, whether he uses or rejects a ball screen, defenders have a tough dilemma. Do they stay on his back and hope that help stops him, or that he lets them get around at some point? Or do they make a big effort to get back in front, which usually ends up in them jumping a bit out of control, him reading this and stopping on a dime or separating backwards to now have enough space for an easy shot? So people act like this is bad defense, but it's really just the dilemma of guarding a good player. This year he's also a much bigger threat to shoot this pull-up off the pick and roll, which makes him even more dangerous getting downhill because defenders have to scoot up even just a little more rather than playing straight drop coverage. And now he can use his downhill ability to penetrate and get some momentum. Also notice that it's not just pick and roll and ISO. He's actually really good at attacking closeouts, and he does it a good amount for a ball-heavy guard. Anytime you have other scorers on your team, the best thing you can do is be seeking out ways to find these longer closeouts. Of course, to catch and shoot, but also to attack. And what's so beautiful about Brunson's game here is the balance between going fast and rushing. Like, he's not wasting any time. He's making these 0-second decisions, catching, and taking advantage of that defender's momentum flying at him. But he also has an air of patience that allows him to make a great read on this defender. Footwork wise, he's almost always catching in a split, or a well-timed hop that allows him to be able to attack either way, and also have some bounciness out of that attack rather than catching flat-footed and being stuck in quicksand. If he doesn't have anything here because it's a well-contained closeout, he's really good at then making a quick fake to create a secondary advantage and then working out of this. It's rarely catch and hold or dribble right away without going downhill or a plan. And finally, the great thing about closeouts is that even if he doesn't get an advantage and gets cut off initially, this defender is sped up a bit, maybe even a bit tired. And after that initial engagement, he realizes that this second attack has a better chance to be successful and stays persistent. Then, in terms of his three ball, he's not using anything crazy to separate from three, and definitely doesn't have the fastest or the highest release, but he knows how to create just enough space. Much of this comes from finding ways to get the defenders slightly on their heels. This could be a quick punch dribble, or something to get the defender thinking he's going downhill, especially when this defender is already a bit behind. A slight weight shift forward out of a hezzy right here, or just noticing when the defender is already on their heels. And then he has this Luka-like ability to shoot with the utmost patience, even on a hard contest, knowing that most defenders won't risk getting a foul called on them for closing out too hard and actually trying to block the shot. And then the last thing we'll talk about is his overall physicality. It's a game changer. I'm sure you've noticed by now how physical he is, and it's gotta wear down on his defenders. Imagine coming down every time and having to deal with this. It's like a boxer throwing body shots and jabs the whole match, and by the end, it's tough to deal with. Even on single plays, if you can use a controlled, powerful bump, it gets players out of position, then they gotta make a big jump to get back, and yet this happens. Even with the off arm, he's constantly using it to get leverage, push the defenders backwards, and project himself forward in a very discreet, legal way. So even when he doesn't have a huge advantage on a drive, he can create one with his physicality. And this general idea is very empowering to a player, to realize, hey, I don't need to get by this guy. I just need a little bit of a step on them, and then I'll use my physicality, fakes, craftiness, whatever it may be, to then create more space. And that's exactly what you see in Brunson's game. So hopefully this gave you guys some insight on some things that you can apply into your game. Whether it's the physicality, the craftiness, coming off pick and rolls, whatever, make sure to take something with you, try it out, and give it a shot. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to tap in with everything we got going on, from our virtual academy to our traveling camps in Europe and beyond. Even our summer academy here in Miami, where athletes travel from all over the world to come train with us. Or just keep tapping into the videos. I just want every single one of you guys to reach your max potential as a hooper. And I'm gonna keep making these videos to make sure you guys all have the opportunity to do so. Till next time.